What's good? What's good? What's good? Had some interesting debates that popped up on YouTube the past few days. I thought we should react to. So we here. Oh man, if you see the names on the in the title, man, you already know this is about to be a fiery debate because Dr. Umar has never been known to play around with anybody, and Jesse Lee Peterson. Boy, what a character he is. And I ain't gonna lie to you. After watching this interview, I did not realize how much of a character he was. I know he liked to speak his mind. I know he was extremely conservative, but I did not know how he liked to cross the line. And he likes to cross the line a lot when it comes to some of the things he'll say. But hold on, man. I ain't even get into it the right way. But besides that, man, we're gonna get right into it. I got some Malcolm X pulled up because I think that's gonna be probably the best thing to even speak on. Matter of fact, we're gonna get into that first because a lot of the points that they talk about haven't always talked about in the past. So I just wanted to see how some of the old leaders address these conversations and talking points before we get into the Umar. So we're gonna get into some James Baldwin. If y'all don't know who James Baldwin is, do some research, man.
Front Page Challenge welcomes the
outspoken this is not the right
Negro
one.
leader, Malcolm X.
They got me clicking on all type of shit.
I would like to add someone to our group here. Professor Paul Weiss, the Sterling Professor of Philosophy at Yale.
Philosophy. And hold on. Let's say, so the first thing about introducing this dude, he's a philosopher. And one thing that's like just about the balance of all things, like philosophy is great. Philosophy is important, but it's similar to what I heard J. Cole say, fuck a politic when a kid ain't got the pot to piss. So philosophy goes very deep, and philosophy can change whole civilizations and society, right? But it also can be a little too idealistic to solve certain problems, especially when it's right in front of you. And I'm gonna get into exactly what I mean after I let them explain. They side a little bit.
Were you able to listen to the show backstage?
I heard a good deal of it, but then I was behind the rostrum here.
Yes.
So I heard only some of it.
Did you hear anything that you disagreed with?
I disagreed with a great deal of it. And, of course, there's a good deal I agree with. But I think he's overlooking one very important matter, I think. Each one of us, I think, is terribly alone. He lives his own individual life. He has all kinds of obstacles in the way of religion or color or size or shape or lack of ability. And the problem is to become a man.
But what I was discussing was not that problem.
And this is that white dude argument, which is hilarious. This was what Umar said. That's literally verbatim of what Jesse Lee Peterson debate was. Back in our day, we knew what a man was. The difference between boy and a man. Well, obviously, as a philosopher, this is going back to what I was talking about. A boy into a man, you transition, and that's how it's supposed to go because that's how you lead generations and the next generations, and that's just how you have a successfully family tree and stuff like that. But what happens when somebody stunts their family tree? What happens when somebody stunts, like, just stunts that person growth to? Or what happens when they don't even tell them what really a man is? Like, what happens when that person, like a young boy, gets disconnected from every man around you is broken, every man is around you is being whooped and beaten into submission, every man around you is even being raped or running away because they maybe the strongest man that you will have ran away because like he not gonna fight them, but he not gonna stand up for it too, and that's like literally the strongest you can get. So how can you get any messages from him? He's ran. So racism has had a big effect on how black boys turn into men. Simple. So when you say just raise yourself up by your bootstraps or just put on the chin strap and go to work. Well, nigga, I don't have a helmet. I don't have shoes, essentially in that metaphor. How can I lace up the bootstraps when no boots have been given to me? That's what the idea of racism is. And I've seen many people talk about, if you started from a 2-parent home, take 20 steps. If you started, if you ate breakfast every day, take another 5 steps. Little shit like that, where when you see how other people move and operate on a daily basis, then when you see how a black person may move on a daily basis, a lot of these people get to essentially be ahead of us. And I'm not asking for equality or anything like that, because that's just not realistic. But let's not act like things wasn't inherently set up for these people that's already ahead of us to eat better and more often and more consistently than the people that wasn't. It wasn't a behavior thing in our mind to why we didn't want to perform like these other people that's supposedly more successful in society. They literally had economical benefits throughout, and Dr. Umar will get into that. But let's finish what James Baldwin had to say.
Really, I was discussing the difficulties, the obstacles, the very real danger of death thrown up by this society when a black man attempts to become a man.
All this emphasis upon black man and white does emphasize something which is here, but it emphasizes it or perhaps exaggerates it, and therefore makes us put people together in groups which they ought not to be in. I have more in common with a black scholar than I have with a white man who is against scholarship. And you have more in common with a white author than you have with someone who's against all literature. So why must we...
I'm not mad at that point. Let's dissect it though. When he said exaggerates, how often would you respect the opinion of somebody that doesn't listen to literature or respect knowledge? So of course you wasn't resonate with them. But let's be real as hell right now. There's also intellectuals that are racist. So I might not, just because you're intellectual don't mean that you're absolved or practicing or doing things that can be against me. So yeah, you may be a white intellectual man, but a lot of things to your lifestyle, a lot of things to you not paying attention to the way that other Americans are being treated. Hold on. Here. I always make the most noise when you're recording. It's hilarious. So what was I saying? Just because you're like a person that studies literature doesn't necessarily make you on my side. So, and the thing about America is, it's just no different than when a cop doesn't speak up towards the other bad cops. You benefit from the systems of racism. You benefit from the redlining. You benefit from the economic structures that recycle money into your community and take out of our communities. So intellectually, you could be smart and wise and think a black man shouldn't be beaten, but then when it says let's restructure a lot of the systems that you eat off of, you're going to have a problem with that. And that's the biggest problem when we talk about white people being racist and white people not understanding and things like that. If we're going to talk about a group of white people, obviously the individual white man does not practice racism on a day-to-day basis, at least to the point that he doesn't know it. But the way that this society has been constructed off the free labors of not just black people, but black people for most of the part. Like, let's be real. I'm going to be real. Black people had 300 to 250 years of oppression and free labor, right? We're not the only group that this country was built off of, like free labor, essentially. They did it to the Chinese when they built the railroads. Like, the Chinese came over here, but the only reason I'm not saying, like, oh, well, what about these people? They pulled up from their bootstraps. That shit lasted like 20 years compared to slavery lasted 350 years. I'm trying to think of other scenarios where groups of people came over here and got used for free labor. I mean, obviously, Hispanics right now are getting used for free labor, essentially. Like, they can get paid pennies on the dime if they don't have their right paperwork and stuff like that. And you best believe these corporations know that and use these people. Like, I've been a manager in the rooms where they know that this person don't have their paperwork, but they still figured out a way to get that person in the system. And I'm just saying. So, in my mind, America uses a lot of the free labor, and most of its citizens participate in that. Even black people, we participate against our own oppression, but that's common sense. Like, anytime you abide by the oppressor and his instead of fighting him or going against his methods, obviously you're participating in your own oppression instead of fighting back. But we already know how hard that can become when you're oppressed and somebody has the power to oppress you. It ain't that easy to just sit up here and fight somebody or manage the courage to fight somebody. So yeah, man, it's a very complex conversation, and I get why Jesse Lee Peterson um tends and this white dude tends to like make it an individual conversation, but once you realize America wouldn't have been here without free labor and your comforts that you exist in between, like yeah, you might have worked your way up, but even you working your way up and becoming successful was built on a lot of the systems that was already in front of you. From nepotism and all these other different things where nigga, if you got a good job, your family got a good job, your dad got a good job, they're gonna pass it down to you. And no one gonna blink an eye. And along with that nepotism, like y'all were already, this is my last point with this. Y'all already got to build a country up and dictate that y'all was the leaders, even though y'all didn't put in a majority of the grunt work, right? So now everybody's gonna practice nepotism, and a group of people has been historically kept out of positions of powers. Now we're gonna practice nepotism, right? Wouldn't stuff like nepotism and like whatever you want to say with friends? I don't know if friends and fall under the like nepotism. I know it's mostly family, I believe, but you will see how that power just keeps continually get recycled because ain't nobody gonna hand off that next role of power or the next generation of power to somebody that don't look like them or to somebody that's not aligned to their beliefs. So knowing those different things, this is how slavery has continued to like expand through America, even though the individual white person or even other individual groups or people have involved in racism but don't know they necessarily practice racism.
You always concentrate on color or religion or this. There are other ways of connecting men.
I'll tell you this. When I left this country in 1948, I left this country for one reason only, one reason. I didn't care where I went. I might have gone to Hong Kong, I might have gone to Timbuktu. I ended up in Paris, on the streets of Paris, with $40 in my pocket on the theory that nothing worse could happen to me there than it already happened to me here. You talk about making it as a writer by yourself. You have to be able then to turn off all the intent of which you live, because once you turn your back on this society, you may die. You may die. And it's very hard to sit at a typewriter and concentrate on that if you're afraid of the world around you. The years I lived in Paris did one thing for me. They released me from that particular social terror, which was not the paranoia of my own mind, but a real social danger visible in the face of every cop, every boss, everybody.
That's what this Kanye and Kyrie conversation come into. It's like, obviously they might be wrong, but how many other celebrities and spoke out and said type of wild shit and they didn't get that same backlash? It's a clear fear, an underlying fear that they want in black people and especially black men to say if you can become successful, but do not pass that line. Tell them about the gun line boss. And Jay-Z spoke to this. It's just this. It's a narrow line. It's like, yeah, you could become successful, but once you start wanting to take ownership and do the things that the people that empower you to do these things that you have been doing, once they say you want to get on their level, they start to act a little funny. They start to act a little strange. So it's like, even with the racism in today's era, like I spoke of this on a little debate that I had on the space. It's like black men and black people necessarily, like racism doesn't apply on an everyday. It's when things at work go wrong, or when you have a complaint at work, when your shit start to get ignored. Like on a day to day when you come in, hi Jeff, hey Susan, like those days, yeah, of course you don't feel racism, but like say something come up where somebody's being treated the wrong way. Like that's when you be like, well, did you do this? Did you do that? They start to double question you. They start to all this other stuff. Or say, you have a problem with somebody that have more power over you, a seniority over you. Even though you could be in the right, they just look at you as another argumentative black dude. Or another, like, so it's like, to me, racism in this world, like obviously it's the systematic racism that we all have to account for on a day-to-day basis. But the individual racism doesn't come until when like somebody's offended. Or somebody mad you have a job and you might be doing it better than them, or you may get the promotion over them. Like it comes into effect in those special circumstances when it's like when rubber meets the road essentially. On a regular day, yeah, it's fine. But that's the confusing thing with black people, because like this person can be my friend, but soon as something happens that's just different from work, they act like they seen a different side of you, and like that you're so unjust, or how dare you raise your voice, or um how dare you say something that come out, like just say something that's contrary to what everybody else believe essentially. But that fear that he speaks of is very real, and you just know it. It's like, man, when I go in here and talk to these white folks, or when I go in here and deal with these people, I have to toe a line to let them know that I'm not this average black person that just gonna get mad or get irate. Bro, I even find myself tipping. Like, just this is like a one-off example, and maybe people don't relate to it, maybe they don't. I will find myself over tipping to make up for the idea that black people don't tip, because what also comes with that, oh, black people don't tip, is ass service or mediocre service. It's like, I get to them when I get to them. My tip ain't gonna be good no way. So just like we have that underlying like idea, and that kind of stems from how black people actually move. I'm not saying they don't, but it's an underlying idea where it's like, I don't want to come off as this dude that y'all gonna label and is like unredeemable, because once you become that argumentative dude, you're untouchable. You're no longer that person that they used to think you were. You're no longer that friendly, nice, soft dude essentially. And it's like, well, the where the racism comes in at is like, bro, we've all had those moments where we felt a certain way and we spoke up about it, but no one else got characterized as just an ignorant nigger or just an ignorant person. Like, and that's what be frustrating. Like, anybody else can voice their opinions, even if they may be emotional, and no one looks at them as crazy. And if you did shit, you'll be called a damn victim. I mean, you're a victim blaming and gaslighting, and you'll be in trouble. Like, how I seen, like, it was a girl coming here to my job, LGBTQ, or a dude that was a girl. How we like fucking changed up how everybody talked, how everybody joked, how everybody moved to make sure that person was safe and didn't feel like it was oppressed. I've never seen companies go to their leaps to make sure black people feel comfortable. Except when Starbucks did the nigger seminar over the coffee shit, but I'm being funny with it.
It's not the paranoia of my own mind, but a real social danger visible in the face of every cop, every boss, everybody. I don't know what most white people in this country feel, but I can only include what they feel from the state of their institutions. I don't know if white Christians hate Negroes or not, but I know that we have a Christian church which is white and a Christian church which is black. I know, as Malcolm X once put it, that the most segregated hour in American life is high noon on Sunday. That says a great deal for me about a Christian nation. It means that I can't afford to trust most white Christians, and certainly cannot trust the Christian church. I don't know whether the labor unions and their bosses really hate me. That doesn't matter, but I know I'm not in their unions. I don't know if the real estate lobby is anything against black people, but I know the real estate lobbies keep me in the ghetto. I don't know if the Board of Education hates black people, but I know the textbooks they give my children to read and the schools that we have to go to. Now, this is the evidence. You want me to make an act of faith, risking myself, my wife, my woman, my sister, my children, on some idealism which you assure me exists in America, which I have never seen.
100% fact. 100% fact. Like, don't bring all that philosophy and shit to me in my front door when that same philosophy has been, like, y'all same philosophy tricks have been used to enslave us and tell us we was less than human. So philosophy can go to a degree, but then it could also be the same things that you use to enslave people. So that's why philosophy can be great and also dangerous. Just like I spoke on debates before. Debates can be great and dangerous. Everything has polarity. Everything has pros and cons. And to speak on what James Baldwin said, like, you're asking me to basically be gullible. You're asking me basically to be just so passive, to ignore the things that's historically happened to us on the faith that you may be just misinterpreting society. You may be misreading the unions and not treating you fairly. You may be misreading the insurance companies and how they always make you pay more and they give you less. You may not you like the redlining and things like that. It's like all these things can be special one-off occasions and circumstances, but if you're an idiot, of course. But when you start to pick and see that this is a historical things done from many powerful oligarchies in American systems, like mainly powerful corporations or not even, it's not even corporations, it'll be called like sectors of America that all practice the same thing against black people and more often than not minorities. So yeah, I could be wrong or whatever. Mike a little low. Appreciate you. What about now? What about now? Mic check, mic check. Appreciate you. Yeah, I gotta be careful with this. I'll be pressing them buttons on accident, I guess. But we'll end off on his little point, and then we'll go to Jesse Lee.
To give my children to read, and the schools that we have to go to. Bosses really hate me. That doesn't matter. But I know as Malcolm X once put it, it's the most segregated hour in American life is high noon on Sunday. That's a great deal for me about a Christian nation. It means that I can't afford to trust most white Christians and certainly cannot trust the Christian church. I don't know whether the labor unions and their bosses really hate me. That doesn't matter, but I know I'm not in their unions. I don't know if the real estate lobby is anything against black people, but I know the real estate lobbies keep me in the ghetto. I don't know if the Board of Education hates black people, but I know the textbooks that give my children to read and the schools that we have to go to. Now, this is the evidence. You want me to make an act of faith, risking myself, my wife, my woman, my sister, my children, on some idealism which you assure me exists in America, which I have never seen.
That shit hard. That shit hard. And then to go to the schools, like, so basically how they determine how schools get funded is basically your community economic like situation. And the flaw in that is like if we're all American, right? And you know that certain communities and projects and stuff like that has way less economic structure and consistency to like keep schools funded well, to keep the kids fed with good programs and nutrition and all different things like that, right? They just can't keep up with the same things that these richer economic people are using. But and I get it. A person that's done well for themselves, their kids do deserve this. But as an American, what does that say about the people that's not in the same shoes as you? If we all American, bro, wouldn't you think a better way to fund a school would to have a collective pot, at least to where it's a somewhat even? Yes, they could still have 20-30% better schools than us. It ain't gonna never be even, but let's not act like it's not a huge discrepancy. It's not a 20 or 30% discrepancy when it comes to the treatment and shit, the regulations and all different things, because you can just look out there and see. But that's just one thing I noticed about the school system. If we was really about being American and caring about every American, I think even the way we fund our schools would be different. Because in my mind, those same kids that's not in my community gonna want to come in my community a certain type of way, where they're gonna either start stealing, robbing, something. They're gonna do where their kid affect essentially their kid could come affect my kid in the future from their bad schools and their bad system. So us just completely ignoring them still puts my kid at risk to a degree. And that's just reality if you really want to talk about America. But let's get into this, man.
You say that there's no such thing as a sellout, but you can admit that the word sellout does exist and that it is used, right?
Yeah, it is used, just like the word racism. We all know that there's no such thing as racism. It's a word that made up to deceive the blind. And so when they use the word sellout, it's meant to divide and conquer. But if you're not in a fallen state, meaning that Satan is not your daddy, you can see the game that's being played. Like Dr. Umar just said, he just spoke.
So if a man can just straight up come out and lie about something, of course this shit gonna sound legit. There's no such thing as the word racism. So there's no, like, prejudice is not realistic either then. Discrimination is not real then. Antagonism, that's not real. By individual, community, or institution. We can see that on every level. You could point to all these things existing on every level. I'm not gonna say it's 100%. It's not gonna say it's all. When we get to intuition, institutions, it might get to that 80, 90% are built on a certain way of belief, but I ain't gonna get into that. But if you come out straight lie in your opening statements, then we basically gonna be arguing stupidity for the rest of the day. So just off of that alone, I ain't gonna lie, he took a major L. If that's gonna be his opening statements, major L.
As a blind man, he has no idea what he's talking about because there's no such thing as slavery syndrome or whatever he said. Our battle is a spiritual battle. It's either right or wrong, good or evil. And in the good old days, when boys were boys and men were men, men knew that, and they let.
When he says good old days, he's also obviously he's trolling, which is so nasty, because what he's referring to good old days is when we were enslaved, when we were oppressed, when we were broken, essentially, or fighting for our lives. Let's say if you're ever Native American or something like that. So I just don't know where he gets his like logic from. Back in the good old days, men like I get it. I get what he's trying to say. But what about all the boys that didn't have their man, like, father in their life? What about all the boys that watched their father get hung in front of them for simply being a man, a black man at that? A lot of young boys wouldn't want to become a man. A lot of young boys will say, you know what, I'd rather stay a kid, or at least act like one. Yeah, I got that one queued up next. I ain't even gonna lie.
Boys were boys and men.
I was gonna knock out both them hoes today.
Knew that, and they led their wives and children in the right way to go. And they did have a conduct of morality. They treated everyone they would like in the way that they would like to be treated, never mind the color. They taught their children how to work and be responsible and not blame and whine. And they didn't put it out there as though they could make it. Dr. Umar Johnson just made up words.
Reverend Jesse, I don't think we should suggest that one person knows more than the other, in the sense of you saying you know it all and anyone else on the panel knows less. That's a little unfair.
Yeah, well, I may not know about.
One thing I'll say, I've been reading this book, Booker T. Washington book, and I could turn the volume up on the video. I've been watching this Booker T. Washington book, and I'm not gonna lie, he spoke to a lot of the same sentiments as Jesse Lee Peterson, as far as like raising themselves up, and just making a way for himself in America. But the thing he did also admit to is saying that his plantation wasn't one of the hardest plantations around and stuff like that. So it's like, I feel like it's some circumstantial stuff that could depend on you becoming a successful slave or not, because even him being introduced to like being able to read, the first like introduction to Booker T. Washington learning how to read was the number 18, because his stepfather essentially worked at this coal mine or something like that. It might not have been a coal mine, but his slot number was 18. So whenever his bucket's like filled up, you write number 18 on it and you send it off. And the kids work with the stepfather to make money, extra money in the house, or be extra faster in the coal mine to get extra money in the house. So he ended up being like infatuated with the number 18, essentially. And from that, he, like, even though he seen other numbers on other people's like barrels and stuff like that, he had no idea what 18 meant or the other numbers meant. So eventually he came infatuated with learning and becoming better. But even in that, to me, bro, like, that speaks to a spirited man, which I know Jesse Lee Peterson spoke to, but that spoke to a spirit in him that not every slave is going to have, bro. And you got to think that was a luxury that he ended up finding as a kid. So it's like, once you become an adult, that imagination a lot of times go out the window. And unfortunately, that's how slavery made most kids grow up fast, to where you don't have the luxury to imagine. You don't have the luxury to educate yourself to even have an imagination. So even with Booker T. Washington, his like infatuating with wanting to learn, I could also say it was kind of like if he didn't work in the coal mines, would he ever been infatuated? I'm just making a one-off argument, but I don't know, man. That whole pull yourself up by the bootstraps in the good old days is fucking crazy to me.
But I know Dr. Umar Johnson is blind and that he's wrong. And he doesn't know God. So he's telling people words, fancy words, in order to deceive them. If you knew that our battle is a battle between good and evil, then you wouldn't make up words in order to deceive. You would tell the truth and hope that those who are blind may wake up and see the right way to go. I grew up on a plantation down in Alabama under the Jim Crow laws, and back then, black
There
people
were no slaves on that plantation?
well, yeah, they had, matter of fact, my grandparents' parents ran the plantation, but they weren't slaves when I was growing up. And the point is,
So I'm assuming he got paid to work, and even if he get paid work, was it the right rates? Because you could still be considered an indentured servant, which is to me still a slave. So I think he could be disingenuous when he said that. He said something else earlier that I wanted to speak on.
Alabama, under the Jim Crow laws, and back then, black
There
people
were no slaves on that plantation?
would tell the truth and hope that those who are blind may wake up.
Okay, so he spoke on good and evil, right? And Coon not being a real word, and he making up these special words and stuff like that. It's still low. Oh, shit. But him making up them special words and shit like that. So if it's about good and bad, to me, it's like, well, if someone was pretending to be good, but they were pushing bad, like advocates, you would easily call them a coon or like, synagogue of Satan or whatever you want to say, right? So that just in itself is like, if there's good and bad, and people know it's a fight between good and bad, will they be pretenders of the good that's being bad? Will there be people that's acting bad that probably want to be good? And like, just in my mind alone, like that's where you would get the words cooning and tiptoeing the line and tap dancing like that. Like that, even with, if you want to say, let's take it away from black and white and make it a good and evil. Essentially, you can still figure out the word coon, and that those type of definitions of people still gonna come up. Like
the reasons I did not return,
like what they call grifters. Like it's gonna be a word in there that you gonna say that this person, yeah, there's good, and yeah, this person acts like he's good, but from time to time you see him swaying back and forth. Like that's human nature. Not every human does that, but we see humans do that at a big rate. So even with him trying to set the premise of let's take it from racism and it's about good and evil or good and bad, even then that's a flaw.
See, racism is a system that all white people participate in to disadvantage all members of another group. So you don't opt in, you don't opt out. And members of the target group don't opt.
And the thing about what Umar just said, whether they like it or not, whether they know it or not, so they're participating in racism. It could be consciously or it could be unconsciously. But that's the big thing. So when a lot of people say, well, I'm not racist, you participate in racism. And yeah, I mean, I'll let him explain more, but I think that'd be big points that get people offended. It's like, well, I'm not a racist. I love black people. You can still love black people and participate in racist systems. Like that's just how life goes. It's very confusing and complex, but it is so.
As Jesse Lee Peterson has so effectively done in his career, is they can identify with the power structure. They can identify with white racism, and they can carve out a niche for themselves by defending the racism that is attacking black people as opposed to defending black people against that racism. A black man in America who does not stand up for his people and in turn aligns himself with the structure that is eating away at the opportunities of black people can go very far in this country. Senator Tim Scott is an example. Jesse Lee Peterson is an example. And we will continue to create these types of personalities, Sister Tammy, if we don't come up with a code, and if the Black community doesn't start holding its members accountable for dysfunctional behavior.
Boom. I ain't gonna lie to you. Point for Jesse Lee Peterson right here. Because what Umar Johnson just said, a part of our Black people and our problems, and I argued this with somebody else. And they was talking about how it was like Steve Harvey or somebody just so bad. It might have been even Stephen A. And I don't even fuck with them. But in my mind, I'm like, these dudes are celebrities. We've already acknowledged that these dudes are step dancers or sellouts. So at some point, how can we be like, these are the same dudes that misguide us and led us and tricked us into shit? It's like, bro, we know these dudes tap dancers. So why would you look for them to be like a certain person that you know that they're not going to be? So to enhance Jesse Leaderson, well, I guess I'm not going to enhance his point. To say why I think he won that little argument is because if Black people came up with these codes and things like that, it'll be easier for these people not to make it, or it'll be easier for see these people where they can't just make it and thrive and trick us a few times before we figure it out. And I don't really think that has anything to do with racism in a sense. I just don't. Like, our lack of unity and stuff like that, maybe. But bro, a traitor is a traitor. I don't give a fuck how fucked up you are as a people. Like, bro, like it's something that you can come up with yourself. So I don't know. It's not a great point, but I do feel like that's a point that's like, well, they don't have nothing to do with Black people. And even he said it's like those type of languages gonna always come up regardless. So it's like, it makes it hard for me to be like, that's just a Black person problem, because Jews do it. Let a Hispanic person be gay openly or something like that. The older Mexican people will like not accept him. What's another example of that? I said the Jews, the Hispanics. Shit, Mia Khalifa with the Muslims, they wasn't having that shit. Like, they're like, nah, you can watch, you can move around. You're using cultural appropriation of the Muslim race and the purity of the Muslim religion to defile it and get clickbaits as being like this, basically not a hype beast, but like a antagonizer to get views. I forgot the word for that shit, but shock jock. So if every group has dealt with that and to some degree they were trying to offer, as they should. I ain't gonna lie to you. What she did was like, bro, some things, bro, are so disrespectful, bro. I don't understand. Like, you disrespecting their God, dog. At some point, what do you expect, bro? Like, you can't disrespect, like, bro, somebody God, bro. Like, this is like disrespecting somebody God, bro. This is this person's way of life. This is how they want their children to live. This how they like. This how they looked at like generations of their family has lived, bro. Like, and you just walking all over that, and bro. I ain't gonna lie, motherfuckers get killed for stepping on shoes, nigga. You step on their God. I ain't gonna lie to you. I get it, bro. Like, that's like, you're supposed to hold God as the most sacred thing besides like your family, bro. So if a nigga key over his family, I don't blame him for wanting to key over his God, bro. Like, that's the only thing that keeps some niggas sane in this world, bro. You just shitting on that whole way of life, bro. Like, that's crazy. And we don't look at it like that, because I guess we don't practice like this word. Like, we don't practice religion like that in America no more. But essentially, bro, I can get that. I understand that to a degree.
Example, Jesse Lee Peterson is,
especially when it's blatant and you come from that tribe. Now, if you're an outsider doing some shit, I can understand it, bro. You'll never be 100% accepted by outsiders. But if you came from this religion, bro, it speaks a different thing. And I think that speaks to Umar Johnson. Like, I agree with him on his point that Black people need to point out these people. Black people need to do a better job of doing this, because then we won't have the complaints of, are these women degenerate? Are these women rappers degenerate? Are these rap men degenerate? And these gangs leading the men down the wrong path? It wouldn't even be a question. We'll be pointing this shit out and actually acknowledging it. And through that acknowledgement, the sales won't be as good. The industries won't press that button as much to be like, oh, produce another gang con, produce another thought bitch to rap. Like, they keep pressing that button because they're like, well, they eating it up. So essentially, that button won't get pressed as much if we were able to point these things out. So I agree with Umar, but I think that also speaks to Jesse Lee Peterson saying that you could pull yourself up. Like, if y'all community was doing that, Like if we've been doing that for like the last 50 to 60 years, bro, you'll see so much improvement in our group. I ain't gonna lie to you. So
as an example, and we will continue to create these types of personalities, Sister Tammy, if we don't come up with the code and if the Black community doesn't start holding its members accountable for dysfunctional behavior.
yeah, I agree. But are we gonna completely blame white people at this point in time for not knowing what's right and wrong? Like, and I get it. Some people like lives and their circumstances, like it creates a certain behavior type. But we still need to acknowledge that it's not right. And whether it's some self accountability or whether it's some like people literally attacking these people where they become this way, we still need to acknowledge this is not right. So then we can make the next steps. But in Black people, gang niggas is cool. Black women, I need a street nigga, I need a hood nigga. So we're in this purgatory of knowing is this shit bad? Or is this what the Black man really should be? Because some women really think like that's the ideal Black man, a smart gangster nigga, or a reformed gangster nigga. So it's like, to a degree, we definitely got some shit to work on with that.
There were slaves in America. That is not happening today, and it wasn't happening
That's a lie.
When I was growing up in Alabama.
That's a lie. If there's still modern prisons going on and mass incarceration, that's a lie.
This idea that slavery is the cause of the lack of morality for Black people is insane. It's just another sign of an illogical mindset. Because when I was growing up, the bathroom was outdoors, outside bathroom. I had to work the cotton fields and things like that. But it was the character of the man or the woman that counted. And when I was growing up, Black people at that time were known to be men and women of character. Today, Black people, not all, but most, are known to be men and women who lack character. The world knows that Black people are suffering not because of this phony idea of racism, slavery, systemic racism, and all that crap. They know that Black people are immoral, that they come from failing parents, and that they hate everybody, and they have no love.
But that's not your.
Oh man, he said a lot there. Now I'm gonna be real with you. A lot of things he said was kind of right, but I think his point is a part of, like, the reason I know him like to be a troll is because even Umar speaks to it. He knows the truth. You can't say all these different things about it's not morality, it's not the white people and racism, morality, it's Black people and not being accountable. Like, that's probably 30% of it, 40% of it. Why the Black people that are not good in spirit or behave the way that they do. We've lost morality, we lost character. And that's a big part of it. But I would say racism is a good 40% of the other, like a part of the pile as well. And then maybe there's some other 20% shit where it's like religion or something. Or being disconnected from God, which probably would be the biggest percentage. But I'm just saying. Just trying to throw some percentages out there. I don't think it's just like this one way or the other. So he's partially right. And the reason I say partially, because even then you would be like, well, what happens when like there were programs and systems implemented to break the character and morality of people? What would you expect for them generations of people? And if you expect greatness, at what rate? Like, how fast do you start to expect that group to pull itself back out when they have been stripped away for years, hundreds of years? That these things have been practiced on taking this person's character, taking this person's spirit away, taking this person like morals away. Like, if that's been done for 10 to 20 generations, right? How many generations out of that do you expect them to start to pull themselves out? And that's why his argument starts to fail to a degree, because we've been in this for generations. And yes, slavery's over, but then he spoke about Willie Lynch. Are we going to dismiss that same fear that Dr. Baldwin spoke of that was still being instilled into Black people during that movement? Like, let's be real. 1965? 1965 is what the civil rights and the movement like that. But even then, into the 90s, we still had the war on drugs, and that being implemented into our communities. And guess what? Drugs and a lack of character and a lack of morals go hand in hand. A person wanting to take hard drugs and deal with that type of lifestyle, guess what? Most of the time, the people that lack character, when times get rough, are going to fall to those substances. So the lack of character and all these different things is, you can see why we felt falling to the hip hop industry, or why we fall into these different things, because we've been broken. And I don't think we have had enough time to truly build our moralities and truly build our character up as a whole, as a group, like individually wise, of course. But when there's so many crabs in the bucket, that individual is not really noticed as much. So I do think we are progressing. I think as Black people, like as we grow through this society, I think there'll be more successful groups and families, and I think we'll realize this. That's why I think people like Kevin Samuels was important, because he brought back a little morality, even though people didn't like it. Obviously, Andrew Tate, Red Pill in general, it's bringing a certain type of character and morality back, of way going back into like what we should expect and what we should look for, which I think helps Black people as a whole. But that's just one step of the process for sure.
But they're afraid to tell the Blacks.
That's
not all, but most unknown to be men and women who lack character. The world knows that black people are suffering not because of this phony idea of racism, slavery, systemic racism, and all that crap. They know that Black people are immoral, that they come from failing parents.
So if we come from failing parents, why? Where does that come from? What are the stats on that? Like, what are the reasons behind Black people having failing parents? Are Black parents just like inclined to be failures? Is that just like their nature? Or was it something or some systems placed in front of them for them not to be great parents? And let's be real. When we look at statistics, Black parents do way better as far as being in their kids' lives than any other parents, especially Black men. So knowing that, like, you could be a good parent, but still not be able to implement things in your kid's life because you didn't know them. Whose fault is that? Is it the previous generation? Well, they didn't know those things either. Well, is it the previous generation? Well, they didn't know those things either. Is it the previous generation before that? Well, them the ones that got everything stripped from them. They did know it, but everybody that was wise or whatever got beaten into submission. So when you speak on bad parenting and you make a blatant statement like there's not racism, and you basically say that Black parents are just inclined to fail, they're not great, and essentially that's what I would assume from that. Because like, what would you blame the bad parenting on?
And that they hate everybody.
Kids raising kids. Where does that statement come from? Why are kids raising kids? Jesse Lee Peterson. Because there's a historical thing that's been going on to Black people that hasn't allowed them to be able to grow up fully. And I say this about gay men. It's easier to be a gay man than a Black man. Society looks at you a certain way. They treat you a certain way as far as like they don't what they expect from you. You can say different things. You can speak. A Black gay man can say whatever the fuck he wants. He could damn near abuse a woman, and nothing happens to him. You can be emotional. You can be all type of shit. Let that same let the same man be straight and have them same attitudes and speak out how he want to speak. They gonna get rid of him. And this is just something I've noticed. You can literally put your hands on a woman as a gay Black man. Let a straight Black man do that. That shit'll be fucking asinine. And not only what I've seen after reading the Booker T. Washington book, and I'm still reading it, playing dumb as a Black man is more beneficial than being like, it seems safer to play dumb than it is to be wise and stand up for your beliefs and stuff like that. And I see that in a lot of Black men as well. They'll shortchange themselves so they don't have to deal with shit. They'll downplay themselves so they don't have to go through certain arguments. And guess what? I love to like correlate shit to let y'all know that this shit ain't just a one-off thing. The reason I can show you this, look at niggas in marriages. They do it with their woman. They'll rather they woman be right than have a discussion and argument because they just do not feel like going through those hoops, and then risking might not having sex for a month or some shit like that. I'm just being funny. Well, not really. For them niggas, that shit real. But essentially, if these same men practice that dumbing down that technique with their women, happy wife, happy life. Your woman's always right. That's the only way that could be possible if you dumb yourself down. So that's another like symptom of trying to survive racism. Assimilation, another symptom of trying to survive racism. Us like having waves in our head. It could be a lie, it could be a myth. But you see women wearing weave, you see women wearing more Eurocentric features is because it helps you fit in. When you have waves in your hair, it's the closest thing to simulating a white man's hair. And obviously, it's ingrained in our culture. The shit look cool. I don't even know if that's 100% true, but there was many forms of assimilation, from Indians wearing suits. They were just talking shit. Everybody that was in that African agreement to give up the cobalt mines was wearing a suit. Only one dude was in his homeland's garment, or garments, or whatever you want to say, clothing. So the assimilation is a big thing. But that's also due to fear. So I said, acting for black men, there's many different reasons where you'll see them not be their full potential. And it's all usually due to surviving, whether it's acting gay, acting dumb, assimilating, acting like a Carlton, essentially acting like a Carlton, acting like a Jesse Lee Peterson. And then what would be the last one to me? It was on the tip of my mind. I said, dumbing yourself down. It is one more that's on my mind, bro. I'll let it come to me.
And they have no love.
But that's not
Everybody
your
knows
story,
it,
is it,
but
Reverend?
they're afraid to tell the blacks.
That's not your story, is it, Reverend Jesse? Is that your story?
No, because I was raised differently. I was raised to treat all in the way that I would like to be treated, to be fair and to be.
Where did that propaganda come from? I don't think it's propaganda. I think that's like, if you're speaking to what I'm saying, like the assimilation and stuff like that, I don't think it's propaganda. I think it's just survival tactics, and black people gonna adapt. Black men gonna adapt. So I just think it's just a form of surviving. Cause like our grandparents used to brush our hair to a train like waves because they wanted us to look like white men. I was talking to my barber about this. For clowning, it's not a joke, bro. That happens, bro. And that's a good point. That's a good point. I do get people being like, you talk white. That's just stupid. I will agree with that. Somebody saying you talk white is stupid, because talking literate come from all groups of people. Like you can sound very intelligent speaking Chinese, African, or whatever. So saying you sound white is crazy. I get that point. Like I don't understand that, because even you want to talk about education and shit, that shit came from Moors. Like essentially the white people in Europe was fucking pissing and shitting on their streets and having all type of disease, and then the Moorish people came around. So if we want to talk about where intellectual shit come from, saying you sounding white is kind of crazy. Like even like this let me see if I could find it real quick. Hey, ain't gonna lie, anybody, I gotta watch this series. This whole hard. It's only like, it ain't even that long.
Shopify gives you.
I hate these damn
powerful analytics.
I know what I'm saying, and where did it start? Let me see. Here we go. This also hard. I'm glad I found this. This also hard, bro.
What the UN is for. I knew this job would make my reputation internationally. Plenty of potential employers there. Third world countries aren't normally invited to real meetings like this. That's what the UN is for. A place for the powerless to whine about the white man. But they invited Wakanda to the big boys' table because everyone wanted a crack at their resources. Untouched petroleum deposits, medical cures unknown in the Western world, and vibranium, the rarest, most valuable mineral on Earth. Your Majesty, we'll pay whatever price you set for your goods.
They are not for sale until the spiritual advancement of the West catches up to the technological prowess. It would be irresponsible to share our scientific discoveries with you.
Are you calling everyone here irresponsible children?
No. More like sullen teenagers who feel more mature than their behavior warrants. The fact that every conversation here is framed in terms of profit and power says it all. You could have made half these breakthroughs yourself, but there's too much money to be made in misery. Why cure a disease when people pay for medicine? Why?
I just show that just to show, like, bro, our kings, our noblemen, many black fucking Malcolm X, MLK, we have very sophisticated black men that know how to speak, and it had shit to do with how a white person basically spoke their mind. Like, a lot of times in this same example, you could see that the insight of a black man is more intelligent than the white man when you start talking about spiritualities, the subconscious meanings of the things, the words you use, like you said, power and things like that, power and profit. That's what, like, your mind is wrapped around. I can hear that just in your language. He's playing chess with these people. Same with Malcolm X or Dr. Baldwin. Like, they'll have debates with white people and run laps around them. So to say you talk like a white person is almost kind of like, what does that even mean? Does that mean good, bad? It just depends on how you look at white people. In my mind, it's like, it could mean anything, but I get why people use it like that. I guess that's like the people look at white people as the epitome of knowing how to speak. But I don't know. We got some pretty cold black people in our history. That's all I say. But this being literally, I know I'm saying why and where did it start. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, bro, most of this shit was just fear, and then just a lack of ignorance over time, man. Like, shit, we couldn't read, we couldn't write. So even though something very interesting with Booker T, even though we couldn't read and write, we still kept up with, like, the politics of when the slaves would be free. And Booker T always talk about how he was, like, enamored by that. It's like they'll have meetings every Sunday and they'll still talk about everything going on, even though they didn't have, like, pretty much nothing going for themselves. They wasn't the most brightest. They wasn't the whatever. And you got to think there's no telephones. There's no shit like that. But for some reason, these messages are being passed through a nation with no roads, no freeways, no airplanes, and things like that. So just off that alone, there was a certain level of intelligence there. But I think over time, yeah, it's just like we couldn't read, we couldn't write, so we attributed the people to being smart as the white people. So, like, if we was to have a meeting, a white person always had to be in a room. What does that mean? It's like they almost look at us as subordinates, and they need, if you're gonna have a group of black people in a room, you need a parent essentially. Now, Booker T, nigga, I know you know there's another Booker T Washington besides the wrestler, and I think he got his name from the real Booker T, if I'm not mistaken. But Booker T Washington, shit, I mean, I don't even know what to call him. I don't even know what to call him. He was a political educator. Yeah, that's what he was, an educator. He basically was known to be, he was at not Spelman, but yeah, he taught at Tuskegee and he taught at the other black school with an H, Howard or something like that. But he got a real interesting story. Like, he walked all the way to Howard, didn't have any money. He was sleeping under a house. And he basically worked until he gathered up 50 cents to afford the tuition. But even when he got there, he couldn't, the books and shit he couldn't keep up with, the clothing and shit he couldn't keep up with. So he ended up getting like a janitorial job and shit like that to maintain his tuition and stuff like that. But even then he got behind. But he was such a stand-up dude. He basically earned the good graces of the school and then became like shit, a leader at other schools and stuff like that. But he was cold. But Let's keep going.
Honest, because you're either children of God or children of Satan, and it has nothing to do with the color. And the children of God cannot hang out with the children of Satan because they have their hearts are wicked and they have illogical mindset. The two men that just spoke, it made no sense.
So I'd like for you to teach me.
They don't have a logic.
Reverend Jesse, I would like for you to teach me for a moment here.
Yes.
Please break me away from tradition and what I've been taught in the white schools that I've attended that suggest that there was this society in America that wouldn't allow white people and black people to drink from the water fountains. Did the white institutions I attend teach me that wrong, or was that correct? I'm ready to learn from you.
Well, as a matter of fact, when I was growing up, I remember the colors only signs and the whites only signs. But because most black people loved what was right, they loved God, they knew that all white people did not feel that way. It was primarily the white people who belonged to the Democrat.
So I'm agree with him here, even though he's wrong in his overall sentiment. Booker T. Washington spoke on this as well. When you look at many of the unrest that happened in like certain towns and things like that, you'll see white men dying to fight for black people freedom. Like, he was a shop owner that was obviously the historical shop owner. He stayed on the black people's side just because, not that he felt like he was more black or anything like that, but he felt like you should stand up for what's right. And he ended up dying and perishing to stand up for black people. And he wasn't the only example. And we always get that white savior story, but that is black people kind of overreacting to shit. Let's be realistic. The white savior is just saying that there will be some white people that agree with you to a degree. Will they help you? Can they help forward the movement more than you probably can? Maybe, possibly. It depends. We just were saying, like, the red pill community was just saying that Pearly, what I'm gonna react to next, she can forward the red pill community further than shit Kevin Samuels and many other red pill people could, because she is the face of a woman. It's hard to be like you're a misogynist. It's hard to be like you're a woman hater when you're a woman. So sometimes a white person can forward something further because this is their society. So to a degree, they look like a white savior and it look like you need white people, but it's just a part of real life. Like, bro, not every white person is evil. Not every white person is not gonna ever help you or never think what they other people are doing. But what I would speak on to the white water fountains versus black water fountains is that the reason that you can say that it ain't every white person is true, but then at the end of the day, why weren't there enough white people to stand up and say that shit was wrong? Like, why wasn't there enough white people to say, man, stop, like, why these black people shouldn't be eating out of the back of a restaurant. Like, they pay money just like we pay. They should be able to sit up here. So Jesse Lee gonna say that it's not all of them, and I agree, it's not all white people, but he's also gonna make it seem like it's not the majority. And I don't know I'm gonna be real with you. I don't know if back in the day, if it was 50-50 white people, like when we look at the Jerry Jones crowd picture, is it 50% of the white people there racist and 50% of them not? I don't know. Is it 70-30? I don't know. But even if it's 50-50, that's a hell of a lot, to be real with you. But I would want to get like Jesse Lee Peterson's mindset of like, what does he think the average white person was racist? Like, how racist do he think they was back in the day? They'll call her a pygmy, but those are women that just like ain't gonna never make it or do anything. There's still gonna be like another group of women that hear her out that would never hurt a man just because he was a man. Like it's gonna be a big group that's gonna like obviously keep hating her and talk shit, but I still think that she's gonna cast a net into like the women's sphere that a man wouldn't be able to cast and grab a lot of them women out of there that probably was gonna be stuck in feminism and against the red pill because it just was man versus woman. It's hard to have that man versus woman debate. Like, that shit only goes so far. And then being a white woman, I ain't gonna lie to you, they be fucking up some of these black women heads. It's like, I thought we were all for feminists. I thought we was all for feminism. So I said the white women speak against it. They don't have nothing to go hold on no more. I'm gonna be real with you.
Democratic Party, and they didn't want blacks to be a part of the Democratic Party. And so that's why the blacks started the Republican Party, because the blacks. So when we dealt with the for black only signs, for white only.
How long we been rocking?
Common sense said it wasn't everybody. It was those who serve evil.
But it was the majority of the white people. We can agree with that.
No,
right?
it wasn't. It wasn't the majority of black people. It was a few.
I said
black
majority of the white people.
Okay, so he said a few white people. I know he said black, but obviously he was talking about white. Let me make sure you clarify.
Well, let's get back on to sellouts.
Actually, I know he did clarify already. I remember watching this part. He said a few white people, right? So you telling me a few white people was able to implement the systems that only black people can use the lesser resources? Like if black people gonna be a part of America, they get all the lesser shit from communities being put in like probably places where there was no economic benefit, like the land was either ass or wasn't next to water, wasn't next to downtown, like put them over there somewhere. And even then we still figured it out. To our educational systems, once again, they're still like, we get the lesser resources. We still see these things today. It's like our communities that was built on nepotism and recycling our wealth, even though we're all American, can have the greatest schools and greatest systems, even though these other people are American. We don't care about them, essentially. So even then, you telling me it was the few that implemented redlining. It was the few that implemented mass incarceration. It was the few that let black people get hung in trees when they had these what do you call race riots and things like that, when they'll just go sweep and go into a black community and take a black man out of his community or burn his home or burn across there or hang him or whatever. So you telling me it was just a few? If that's the case, how weak was the majority of white people not to stand up against the few? This cracks his argument, because that either means they were so fucking weak that they couldn't stand up to the few, or they didn't care about black people enough to even say nothing on the grand scale of things. Like, yeah, I'm sure there were white people that were speaking up, but I'm sure they was just as few as if you say there was a few leading the shit as them. And then there was a majority of white people that just went with the more popular narrative or just went with the status quo. So sure, most average white people, if you was to go in a home and ask them, are you traditional? Are you liberal? Most people will tend to be conservative and be like, no, that black person deserves a life. But get that same person in the crowd of people or get that same person in the room of people to state their opinion, they're going to start to follow the status quo because they don't want to look like an outcast. So yeah, maybe they didn't have maybe they didn't have hate in their heart, but the submissiveness to go with the status quo is enough. Because we say that same thing about cops. It's like, obviously not all cops are bad. Maybe there are a few cops that are bad, but if there's just a few amount of bad apples, why aren't you niggas strong enough or bold enough to step up against them? Oh, we about the shield. We're about our brothers. Okay, then. So obviously you don't care enough to stop that shit because you got other things that are more important to you, like following the status quo, like fitting in, not feeling like an outcast. So huge L for Jesse Lee Peterson at that point, because how can the few dominate and implement rules that affected a nation? It's crazy. Think about the vid. Most people want cool with the man. Exactly. I thought you meant the video. Yeah, cool with the mandates, but nobody wanted the exactly, bro. If you was to ask a person, hey, would you take a rush vaccine? No. Would you take a vaccine that wasn't clinically approved by the FDA? No. Would you take a vaccine that you could not sue people for if it was wrong, even though it was rushed? No. Get them in public with them same facts, and everybody, for whatever reason, has already pushed the narrative we should take it. They're like, yeah, I'm gonna take it, or yeah, I'm gonna get it. And it could be due to fear. It could be doing the fitting in, because there was many tactics. The COVID the vaccine tactic wasn't just one tactic. It wasn't just the take it or you get a job. It's also all your family members got it. It was also think about other people, so you don't hurt other people. You may be healthy, but you don't want other people to get it. So it was many different tactics of why people held on to the status quo. And I'm sure it was the same for slavery. I'm sure everybody that supported slavery and or didn't speak up against racism didn't have hate in their heart. But not having hate in your heart ain't enough to dismiss or justify why you're not racist. Because looking the other way is a statement. Looking the other way is an action. Not speaking up is an action. And to me, it's just as racist as somebody that's committing the action. Well, not just as racist, but it's just as deadly, and it should be held accountable just as, not just as much, but to a level, I don't know how to say that. We should be holding them accountable, not to the same level of people that commit the action, but to a certain degree. That's how to word it a lot better. So, no different. Like a cop standing on somebody's knee, yeah, he's fucking evil. But there were other 4 cops that was in that circumstances that didn't pull him up, that didn't like cut the rope essentially, that didn't put the ladder under the dude's feet once they moved, once they tried to hang him. Like at any moment you could have stepped in, but you're just like for whatever, you were stuck in paralysis or whatever. And then that in itself is a form of racism, and it really speaks to the system of racism. Let me think carefully how I say this. It really speaks to the system of racism, because it could make some, like, you don't even have to support this, but due to certain like economic and societal reasons, you have no choice, damn near. Whether it's due to fear, whether it's due, like, and it's so sinister, bro. It's so sinister.
Dr. Umar.
Yes, ma'am. And I would like to respond to him, if I may, Sister.
And it
Tammy.
wasn't a majority of whites.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dr.
I want to clarify something when we talk about racism. Racism is not an individual personality fault.
It doesn't exist, man.
Racism is not about individual personality. Racism is about systemic injustice, systemic bias, systemic disproportionality, systemic discrimination. You do not opt out of racism.
Dumb.
All white people benefit from and participate in racism. So whether you,
and this is when you use that all word, this is when people start to get like confused. But one thing is for sure, 2 things for certain. They both used I forgot what that word is, like when you basically polarize it to one side, saying all. Peterson said there's no such thing as racism, and then Umar says that all white people are racist. If I was to lean towards one of the sides, I'm definitely leaning towards Umar. Just to, like, bro, it's in the Bible, racism. It's in the Bible. Like, Moses literally was like, let my people go. And then he's talking about being godly and not being about race or not being about anything. But even if it's not about race, then there's classism in a group that's historically kept out of classes or whatever. There's many isms out here. So even that alone is just like no racism at all. And then what Umar's speaking to, that every person is racism or contributes to racism as far as white people, like that's more realistic, just because that doesn't have to be a conscious participation. That's why I said what makes racism so dangerous and so like such a crazy topic to talk about. Because when you say stuff like that, it makes it seem a certain way. But even to even enhance his statement, bro, black people contribute to their own oppression. Every group at this point has contributed to their own oppression. And the people that supposedly are the rulers of this society, white people, obviously you wouldn't look at them as contributing to their own oppression. But yeah, they contribute to our oppression, essentially. But in my mind, I think we all oppressed to a degree, bro. White people thinking they conquerors or trying to be like the rulers of shit or whatever however you want to look at it, bro. Even a person participating in racism on the white side of things, bro, they are oppressed, but it's a different strain of things, if I'm going to be real with you. It's a different form of oppression. And I don't even want to get in that topic because that's when we really get out of whack for sure. But yeah, I broke it down earlier saying just the participation, just the fact that there's blood on the money, and no one is acknowledging that. No one is realizing how basically how you've been put in a great circumstance of society is built on the economical advantages of your people in the past. But it's a hard conversation because it's like, well, do I come off my money? Do I give away all my wealth that if my family ain't earned and shit like that? I don't think you should individually, but I think there should be some type of collective, bro. And if you don't understand that, that just speaks to your lack of education on why you got this wealth. And if we talking about middle class white people, obviously they have a small percentage to pay because they were a part of it. They were the foot soldiers that used to come into our cities and fuck over us. But obviously, I would expect corporations and governments to pay a lot more than an individual person. And however, they need to figure that out. But it's a tough conversation because nobody wants to give up their wealth that they feel that is not connected to it. I'm trying to think of the best scenario to put it in. And I want to use like sports. The only reason you starting on the basketball team, only reason when you look out at the judges and the politicians and whatever being historically white and ran by white ideas is because y'all didn't let us in the game. So you could be like, oh, well, my wealth is not contributed to racism. But we've been gatekeeped and all these other different things by generations of these people that's in hiring you or your fathers or whatever, right? And if y'all just open it up and let it be free, it'll be similar to baseball being taken over by blacks and minorities. It'll be similar to the NBA, where it was dominated, it ended up being dominated by blacks and minorities. Same with basketball. So when you think of it like that, when you see all these black people not being able to be powerful and all these different things, I think it still speaks to us being gatekeeped. Because in any other situation, bro, we dominated once we got our chance. I don't see it no different. I don't see it no different. But I said it makes it a hard conversation. I tried to use a sport analogy. I don't know if it really hit home or not. But as a white dude, to like further that analogy, you feel like you've earned that. You feel like you deserve that, but it was really only given to you through nepotism and through systems that allowed you to be scouted, that allowed you to get the look, even though you really wouldn't even be you probably wouldn't even have made it to college if we was to really compete. And I'm not saying that I think black people are just more intelligent than white people or anything like that, but I think if you open it up, it'll be more even. It wouldn't be 90% dominated by judges or 90%. Police officers 90%. Like when I grew up, I wanted to become a cop until I realized the systems. When I was younger, I wanted to be a lawyer till I realized the systems wasn't fair. I'm being real. Like I'm dead ass. I wanted to be a lawyer till I'm like, bro, a part of me wanted to be a lawyer because I seen shit was unfair. But then when I seen like that's like literally the system, I was like, I don't even think I can maintain that in my mind. Maybe I was thinking too ahead of myself. But essentially, what was I saying? We've been gatekeeped and things like that. And like I said, give us that freedom, take away that gatekeeping shit. We're going to dominate shit. We're going to dominate shit. And look at clothing or something like that, bro. Look at the clothing industry. Jockeying, using our styles. And they call themselves the leaders of fashion, leaders of the industry. Soon as Kanye got a chance, bro, dominating. Soon as Virgil got a chance, dominating. Let some black people in the fashion world and see how easy they dominate that hoe. And the gatekeeping and the you got to work 30 times as hard to get to a spot that somebody that didn't work nowhere near as hard as you, that don't have nowhere near skill or nowhere near the talent as you, got that job because of nepotism, got that job because of his skin color. bro. Look at resumes, bro. Change your name to a woman. I mean, change your name to a whiter name or something. I forgot what they said. Do make your resume look white. Give your kid a white name. He'll have a better chance of just getting a chance to be in the interview. That alone speaks to the gatekeeping. That alone speaks to the economical disadvantages of black people. Just because your name alone, you might not even get the interview. Versus Brad Kelly or Chad Johnson. Even though Chad Johnson's a black name, I'm being funny. I just try to throw two. That's master name. Even though those names could be just straight white, he got the comb over, shit like that, he gonna get the job. Or he have a better chance of getting the job, which everything is about odds. So I don't think black people will dominate the judicial system. I don't think black people will dominate politicians or the political world, but we would have a bigger say so if things wasn't gatekeeped. And just look at sports, bro. And maybe you think, oh, we're just more inclined in sports than other people. It's the same in fashion. It's the same in education. It's the same in spiritualism. Look at Black Panther. It's the same in spiritualism. Let black people run court systems. Let me take that back because the black lady just got hold. Well, the black lady was just holding people with the Meek Mill case and all that. She got a whole bunch of stuff pulled off. But you can argue that she's a white person in blackface, essentially. Let a black person that's truly hasn't lost their morals, hasn't truly lost their blackness and things like that, and let them get into these positions of power, bro. More often than not, you'll see a difference. But when you get these Carlton type of people, these coons that they're more in love with the idea of just being able to participate in white, like, richness, or white, like the elite echelons of society, that'd be good enough for them. So that'd be the problem with those type of people. And I don't think those are vindicative of how all black people will act in that position as well. But that's all a part of doing the racism too. The policeman that's gonna shuck and jive and do shit, you put them in the house. Make them a house Negro because they identify and act more like a light skinned or white person, or act like a white person more than the people that's in the field. Essentially, that's the like the psychology that come from that. So I mean, knowing that shit, bro, them the type of people that get those jobs. So it's still a form of nepotism, is what I'm trying to say. It's still a form of nepotism. These black people that get these jobs be still a form of nepotism because they have shown that they will assimilate to the white behaviors and the white ideas and the white look. They wouldn't give those same jobs to a dude that looked like Dr. Umar that come in with his African garb and his black pride.
Your ancestors owned black people or not is irrelevant. And the reason it is irrelevant, Sister Tammy, is because even if your ancestors didn't own black people, they worked at a job that was created because of the enslavement of black people. So there's no such thing as slavery did not impact my family. Just like in today's America, all white people benefit from the mass incarceration of black people. They benefit from the miseducation of black children. They benefit from the police brutality against black people. So I want to make sure we are clear.
What you're saying
Racism is not about individual white people.
But what you're
choosing to
saying
hate
is
blacks.
a lie.
Racism is about the system of racism
That's a
that
lie.
controls opportunities and resources, Sister Tammy. Racism is.
I mean, at this point, Jesse P is clearly pandering to a certain group of people, whether it's the white rednecks, the white conservatives, I don't know. But to say that's a lie, bro, you can literally look up the word racism and that's what it speaks to. And then to say, have we historically ever seen anybody practice on an institutional level racism? Yes, mass incarceration, that's an institution. Those are institutions, private corporations. So just with mass incarceration alone, they benefit. Because guess what? White people commit the crimes at the same rate as black people. If black people weren't being mass incarcerated, there'd be a lot more space open for these white people in jail. So that alone, you can get 2 or 3 strikes because we're not really invested in putting your type of kind or your type of people in jail. Even though if we didn't focus on these other people, there'd be plenty of room for you. So even that alone, you get 2, 3 chances to be a white degenerate before you can make it. They say it all the time, bro. These white dudes get into fights on spring break. These white dudes be doing all type of dumb shit at colleges and shit that if they got reported on, they'll get in trouble for. But they get excused, they get dismissed, they get 3, 4, 5 chances because their dad or the cop that's arresting you looks like you and he identifies with you. And I'm not gonna act like that don't exist because it happened with black cops. I pulled on a black cop heartstrings before and got out of some shit because he identifies with me. I'm like, man, I'm trying to pull myself up. I'm down bad right now. I'm really working hard. I'm in school. You start saying all those different things. It's no different than a white dude that is at a white college, a white cop at a white college. These dudes do all type of shit, man. Man, I was just drunk as fuck, partying with my friends, and I pushed my friend over a bridge or some shit. Just some dumb shit. I'm being funny. Like, he broke an arm, but he ain't nothing really else happened to him. And the cop be like, man, yeah, I remember those dumb old days. It was fun and shit like that. And he can get off. So white dudes the fact that there's not a true narrative to paint to talk about how white dudes need to be arrested and stuff like that, like it was during the drug war and stuff like that, they get off on shit. And I don't even know, like, even if there was that, would that change? But it's clear as day. So even with mass incarceration,
it's not about the attitude.
That's just one example.
It's about the control of resources and opportunities.
Tammy, that is not true. This is why we have to. We must get to know ourselves so that we can overcome that fallen state. Dr. Umar is evil for putting out a lie like that or lies like that. Because people are going to believe in it.
Let's refrain from calling people names.
Okay, but he's not telling the truth.
We have to refrain, Sister Tammy, but at the same time, I think it's important that we understand the difference between the Negro and the Coon. Sister Tammy, this is a very important distinction.
And I agree with her. I appreciate her jumping in as a host and saying that. But if you're going to call a person name, I just want you to defend it. If you're going to call him a liar, just stand on it. If you're going to call him a coon, just stand on it and prove your points to why you think that. If we're going to name call, at least prove why this person should be called that name. If not, just don't just dry throw it around to try to sway the audience.
That has to be made. The Negro is innocent in his ignorance, Sister Tammy. As Brother Michael said earlier, some people make mistakes against the race unknowingly. If you make a mistake against the race unknowingly, that was a Negro. Negroes are innocent. They think white people are more intelligent. They think Jesus is black because they
Jesus is white, I believe, is what he meant.
But a coon knows better. But the coon voluntarily identifies with his oppressor because there is an agenda that he's looking to get filled. And the sad thing about Jesse Lee Peterson is he is too old to be cooning at this point in his life. And the fact that he claims to be a man of God doing the devil's work makes him a total hypocrite.
But Tammy, you know what I just want to add to that? To hear Dr. Umar and the other man to speak this way.
That's Michael.
It's Michael, sorry. To hear Michael and Dr.
She's
Umar
a good
speak this
host.
way is abnormal for men. Normally,
She let him
men,
cook,
when
but
I was
she'll
growing up, they had
get in a little
logical
bag.
mindset. But today's black man has an illogical mindset because he thinks like a woman. He has not overcome the spirit of the woman and returned to the logical
There is
mindset of the
nothing more
father
effeminate than a white man.
And I thought about my point earlier when I said there's different ways to like try to survive racism. I said the gay and stuff like that. And then it's also just not ever becoming a man. Like a boy, a black boy will try to stay a boy as long as he can because you don't have the expectations of becoming a man. Same with women. You'll see them participate in the unaccountability narrative because it's easier to do that than to be a woman and like look yourself in the mirror. And it's no different than men. So I see that too. I said the gays. I said the assimilation. Not wanting to become a man or acting premature or dumbing yourself down, essentially. Those are all just ways that black people have found ways to survive America, societies, and shit, the world in general.
He sound like black people. There is nothing more effeminate than a black man defending a white power structure against.
But now the black men, not all but most, they think like their mothers and grandmothers. So they all think just like women, and that's why you can't get it right.
So indicting racism makes you a woman?
And that order is God in Christ, Christ in man, man over woman, and woman over
I'm
children.
not interested in.
But
I'm not
today's-
interested in a religious
Today's black
interpretation of
woman
racism.
today's black woman is over the men. And
It is a mistake.
I say, I'm gonna be real. If we want to bring up who acts more like a woman, it's Jesse Lee Peterson. Cause what does a woman do? If they find power and they gravitate to it for protection and survival, for this man, protection of his black skin or whatever is easier to assimilate, and that's similar to what a woman to do. If she was in a tribe and some dudes from another village came over a lake to come pillage and whatever, they could fight and die, or they can adapt real quickly and be off and away with those new men. And essentially, it's just a survival method. I don't look down upon someone that does that, because at this point, they just want to stay alive, and you can't knock anybody in the things they do for just trying to stay alive. But I believe out of anybody in this conversation who's acting the most feminine is Jesse Lee Peterson, and the how he has his mouth on the white society's titty. If I'm gonna be honest, and he loves it. He loves that white titty of America. And I don't think you could do anything to pull him away from it. I don't think you do anything to pull him away from it.
State to use religion to interpret political phenomena.
That's why
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come right back on the Tammy McFadden Show on Fox Soul. Let's take a quick break. We'll come right back.
Say that again.
Would you consider them sellouts?
Who?
Steve Harvey, and there's another one I'm thinking of.
I wouldn't consider Steve Harvey a sellout as strictly as I would consider a Shaquille O'Neal, a Charles Barkley, and a Kendrick Perkins sellout.
And that's the same with the racism conversation. Not all white people are contributing to racism at the same level. That, like, when you come from on an average white person, yeah, it's minimal at this point. It's mostly coming from corporations. It's mostly coming from people in power positions like judges, politicians. But even though those persons get voted on, essentially, I will say that, by the average white person, regardless of the fact, the average white person doesn't contribute to racism on the daily basis. Yeah, maybe when they vote to keep nepotism in, maybe when they whatever, you know what I mean? So it's levels to racism, just like it's levels to coonery. And I appreciate that point from Umar, because I 100% agree. Like a person like Steve Harvey, to me, he coons with women and panders to women. But when it comes to black topics, I haven't really heard him say too many crazy things, versus, like, obviously I'll let him get into it.
And the reason I'm drawing a distinction is whenever Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley, and Kendrick Perkins open their mouth on issues involving black people, they always take the side of the white power structure. Whereas with Steve Harvey, I have seen some attempts by him to defend the integrity of black people. It's not often. I'm not even going to say it's acceptable, but there is levels to the Coon kingdom. There's levels to the Coon kingdom. So even though they are all sellouts, you have your grade A coons like Jesse Lee Peterson and Charles Barkley, and then you have your grade B coons, which will be like a Kendrick Perkins and a Shaq, and then you have your grade C coons, which would be like a Steve Harvey. So there's levels to the Coon kingdom. Say again.
But you do put him in the Coon kingdom.
I would put Steve Harvey.
The biggest product of racism that we're watching here is the infighting. The infighting. Umar Johnson and Jesse Lee Peterson are very bright people. Like, even though I think Peterson is definitely ignorant or displaying ignorance and has said some just stupid shit, he's still a very bright man. And if him and Johnson and Michael Amhotep could work together, along with Tammy Mack, she's here too. If they could work together through these like little semantic points, because let me just finish my point. The little semantic points, we will be so much further as black people. But Malcolm X said, I couldn't find the quote because this was one of the quotes I wanted to get into before we got into this. The the fighting of black people and essentially one side of it becoming like the talking points of a white person. So it ended up being a black person fighting against a white person, but they use the black people that identify with whiteness to defend their points. And it just, it gets us nowhere, man. Especially when you realize a lot of this shit is semantics. Like, I know for a fact Umar knows that there's a lot of self-accountability that needs to be had in the black community. That's why he says that we need to stand up and gatekeep and call people out. He even said the black people on the streets, I can't save all of them, off with them. So there is some self-accountability where him and Peterson would agree on. If I was the host, I asked him that. I'm like, do y'all ever, like, y'all saying things at certain aspects of y'all points that are similar. Do y'all realize that? Like, I'd be wanting to get to that point of shit when it comes to like people debating and having conversations. It's like on certain levels y'all agree with each other. And on Jordan Lee Peterson, I will ask him, you see nothing about what Dr. Umar is saying about systemic racism and things that happened to slavery and chattel slavery, how that was historically worse than anything done in the modern era, let's say the last 300-400 years, maybe even 5. You don't think that has any like symptomatic, like residual symptoms like that will affect black people? By any measure, like, is it a 1%, 10%, 20%? Like, but you think something happened to people for 400 years, and they're just supposed to like within the next 40 years figure themselves out, even when inside of those 40 years there's some questionable shit still happening to them on a group level? There's no way that he can double down on that point if you really hash down that point, because at some point, bro, you come off as an idiot. So like, can I let's pull up some research then. Since you say it's not factual, how do you feel about scholars speaking on this conversation that will probably be way more educated than you with these topics? What about like trauma and PTSD and how that passes through generation? What about how genetics and people behavior of being a beta or alpha can be passed down? Have you ever heard of breeding techniques? If any dog or any cat or any horse is showing a bucking mentality, you get rid of it unless it has some type of like benefit to you for being that type of way. But if you want submissive cats, if you get a cat that keep biting back, you kill that generation of cats, and you just keep raising the cats that are friendly to humans. And essentially you'll get a domesticated animal. Essentially that same method was practiced on black people, domestication of black people. You don't think any of that could be passed down? And if he says no, he just literally put himself in the corner of dumbassery. So in my mind, I do think the biggest racism is us not being able to speak to each other on a level of growth and production, man. Because these are two productive brothers in their own facets, in their own ways. Everybody's up here productive in my eyes. Why can't we have a legit conversation, bro? That's the ignorance in itself, bro. Why? Like when we're gonna watch Paula, we're gonna watch Paula. I mean, Miss Pearl and Andrew Tate. Why we just can't have civilized conversations? Everybody want to start cussing and coming at each other sideways. Let me talk. This is my, like, it just, we don't even know how to be productive with each other no more, bro. And that's the biggest part of something that comes from racism and our problems that's been like around, bro. That's the most annoying thing that I see here.
In the Coon Kingdom, but he wouldn't be grade A like Jesse Lee Peterson and Charles Barkley. And the other thing I wanted to say quickly, Tammy, with Kim Kardashian, that was a perfect example of racism on the part of the white power structure who says,
myself and I wouldn't go for a photo op.
Absolutely. Reverend Jesse.
Yes.
You're a part of the Coon Kingdom, he says.
That's right. You know, you just heard the voice of a beta male. That made no sense of what the doctor said and what Michael said. It's sad to see that.
It's hard for me to take somebody seriously. It's rare when somebody makes no sense. But I get it. Be hyperbolic.
Most black people
to win a
believe
point.
that they're all the same because of their color. They're not looking at their true self. They are a spirit created in the image of God. They don't know that. They're going by colors, and so they're all in the same pot, headed down to the road to destruction.
Reverend Jesse, I want to ask you.
Donald Trump
Jesse,
was
I
the
wanna
best
ask
thing
you-
that ever happened to Black Americans because Donald Trump did not see colors. He saw colors, but he wasn't into the color thing. He was into what is right. And that's why he was able to help Black people more so than any other president that we have had in the last, I don't know how many years, right? Who met with the president, they respected him. Made their way. The black man when I was growing up, they made their way. They didn't beg the white man for anything because they
It's
didn't.
not begging white people. Wait a second.
White men were superior.
If you go
to
back
them.
to if you look at the Homestead Act of 1862, that was a massive land giveaway of 245 million acres of land that mostly went to white people. Okay, if you want to,
Same thing that happened with Native Americans. I don't know if that was the same. I don't know if this is the same act. But when they gave land to Native Americans, a lot of white people started identifying with Native Americans. And it's funny, when you think the trans stuff is the first to come out in this era, it used to happen with being Native. They'll claim being Native to get more land. And it's just a form of nepotism because no one ever checked their census. No one checked their genealogy or whatever you want to call it. And essentially they was able to pass as a Native American, even though most Native Americans had some type of melanin in them. So yeah, the massive land giveaways is another form of nepotism, and you gotta think land was the biggest way to have wealth and the biggest way to basically like make that wealth grow is to create a family on top of that land, and that raises generational wealth, especially when you consider that those properties was worth 30 cents and now they're worth hundreds of thousands, and they only accumulated more wealth. I mean, obviously we had housing markets and shit like that crashed, but essentially throughout history and through those times, their land has increased value, and that means they were able to benefit from those land increase. Just being real, like you can take out loans, you can take out money, you can get paid for having land, all type of shit. So as that land was becoming more productive, these people was cashing out and making their generations more wealthy, and even buying more land after they accumulated enough. So I don't know, bro. Jesse Peterson is a mess.
talk about how white people got over in this country. It was by stealing the land, reallocating the land, enslaving African people for 240.
Stealing land? That's not true. What? Have you read a history book?
6 years.
Those are
passing
lies,
passing laws that disenfranchised us, locked us out of voting. Then after the Civil War and after Reconstruction, 1877, because I always notice black conservatives. I always notice black conservatives is two things you don't want to talk about. One, you don't want to talk about the compromise of 1870. No, you interrupted me.
All
don't
you
say
doing
excuse
is making
you.
excuses.
No. Slow down.
You
Slow
sound
down.
like a female.
Slow down. I know you catering to the white people that donate to your show, but it's two things that.
So this land right here, this land right here. Let's go to the 13 colonies. You think they gave this to y'all? You think they gave this land to y'all? you think this was given to y'all? This place was dominated by melanated people. Yeah, these people look light skinned, but I could pull up many Seminoles that's dark as hell. Just like black people now, we got people that look damn near white, and we got people that look damn near black, that are black or melanated people. So you just can imagine being all type of melanated people living throughout these cultures, some more melanated than others. I'm not gonna sit up here and say everyone look like Africans or look like the what you think a black person looks like today. Not every fucking Native American. But to act like it wasn't none, you're crazy. But all this land occupied. It wasn't stolen. It wasn't stolen. People just blatantly lie online, bro. It's so crazy. All right. I wanted to pull up like a timeline of when everything happened. Whoa, what the fuck? No, just trying to see if I can find something, but obviously it's a blatant lie, bro. Just a blatant lie, and you can get a platform, bro, and say anything you want these days. This is why the cancellation culture, bro, is so annoying because you can have somebody or misinformation culture, like you can have it, and it'll be rampant on social media, it'll be rampant on these platforms, but let you start speaking the truth that hurts people's feelings or like go against certain narratives, bro. Oh my God, you're the worst person in the world. But then this person can come on here and say what the fuck
Black
you want.
Republicans don't want to talk, and I'm not against Black Republicans. I have friends that are Black Republicans. You don't want to talk about the compromise of 1877, which was the compromise between the Republicans and the Democrats, and the Republicans agreed to remove the Union troops out of the South that reinstituted the Jim Crow laws, and the Union troops were protecting the rights of the newly freed slaves to a certain extent, because that's what the Democrats wanted. And you don't want to talk about the Lily White movement of 1928, which was the effort of Republicans to push African Americans out of the Republican Party and get Herbert Hoover elected as president in 1928. Now, if you want to have
that happened in 1928, he said. Well, he said that happened in 1928. I don't remember when he said the removal of Union soldiers. This happened in Houston, and this happened in many different countries. This happened to many different black cities. Houston riots was a mutiny and a riot by 56 soldiers. The all-black 24th Infantry Regiment of the United States, taking place in 1917, Houston, Texas. The incident occurred within a climate of over hostility from a member of all-white Houston Police Department, HPD, still to this day. Against member of the local black community and black soldiers stationed at Camp Logan. So these soldiers essentially was policing their own people. These soldiers were essentially trying to be the accountability for black growth. And guess what? After the black gangs got taken, once the black Union police officers got taken away, our people was now no longer like protected by white people trying to come in, because these people knew how to fight. These niggas knew how to shoot back at people. So having them there, having 156 soldiers, no white people just come in and do whatever they want. So you had protection, you had leadership, you had people that was built on structure and good foundational principles, like making your bed every day, being like a genuine like person in a sense, right? I don't know if I said the right word, but just being you know how they are strict in the military. Bringing that into the black community was well needed over, like when you consider the things we have been through, right? It was a good character builder, things like that. So once these people got taken out, guess what? That's when gangs start to form. And the gangs didn't have these same principles that these soldiers had, so the characters end up being flawed. But let's be real. This all was an attempt as protection that just got out of whack. And at first, it started off with the attacks and the removal of our men that was the most sacred to us. Men that was going to protect and guide and lead us. Now, the people that created gangs are the kids that grew up with no father that still need protection. Just didn't have wisdom and guidance and the tactics of fighting in the military. But they had the ruthlessness, essentially. So people want to realize how we got to this point, how Americans and Black Americans been fucked up, bro. Like after slavery, there were still many different things that they did to come at us and fuck us up. Imagine how Black people have been if we was able to. Black people in Houston would have been if we was able to maintain our communities without being fucked with in 1917. We'll be dominating fucking Houston. That's what I mean by this sports shit, bro. When I said put us in the game, bro. In 1917 in Houston, we had communities protected by Black military guys that had great character, that had great morality. Just like Tulsa, white people came in there, we had a war, they moved all these people out of there. Now the kids that's there don't have fathers, don't have guidance, don't have people that have the highest character, and then gangs form. And then guess what? Now you got gangs. We're going to create mass incarceration. We're going to create drugs community because these gangs need money. These gangs need, man. And people want to act like this shit wasn't taken from us. Bro, Houston would be dominated by Black people. Just like how Black Twitter is. Like, there's no Twitter without Black Twitter. My God. Just imagine, bro. That's over 100 years. If we were left untouched, what we could have created. You think Tulsa was something. Imagine Houston when we got all these ports, all this oil, all this land. We would have grown, we would have expanded, and we would have been a fucking force to be reckoned with in Houston if we wasn't fucked with in 1917. That 156 soldiers being taken away is the reason why you still got apartments like Coke Apartment and Kelly Course in Houston. But you want to speak, Jesse Peterson want to speak to the lack of culture, the lack of character in these men. The immorality here, whatever the fuck he said. Get the fuck out of here. And this will be, well, I don't know. We wrapping it up. Trying to find a map of recognizing majority Black cities. You want to know what's something funny about this land? This was the last bit of Native Americans to withhold the Americans, and this is where you see the last resonance of Black people at. I'm just a little history real quick. Here we go. Seminoles and Muskogees. If you know anything about Muskogees, that's where Django got his identity and where he was raised up at. And then there was also, I think, a dude that was the Will Smith story. He was in Muskogee as well, if I'm not mistaken. But if you look at this, Seminoles, the last remnants of Native Americans, and if you know anything about this history, this is where they moved the creek. The last Indian removal came from this area, and they tried to move them all to Muskogee. They tried to move Oklahoma. That's when they moved people to Tulsa and things like that. So even the fact that we know Tulsa is a Black community, Tulsa didn't get created till after the Indian Removal Act, and we know that that's historically Black people or whatnot. And then when you look at all the black cities still left, this was the last, like, bro, when we say the last fight and fought for Native Americans, when we looked at the whole American and how Native Americans had ran shit, this was the last semblance of Native Americans in the population that they couldn't control. We had many battles with white people and white armies during the 13 colonies during this time, and was doing them boys dirty. Like, we'll have like 100 soldiers and they'll have 1,000, but they'll be in it'll be like 300 to a verse 1,000, but we'll be in our territory and our waters and our rivers, and we'll slaughter them. There's many stories of that happening. Like, it was a story, it happened so bad. They came in, I forgot what president it was. He came in, got demolished, they left, and while they was leaving, they caught the Seminole wives and children, basically, on a little escape route, trying to not be caught up in the war, and killed them all. They got done so fucking dirty. They came across our refugees, essentially, like our women and children that was trying to hide, and got done dirty. And they did them dirty. Killed every last one of them. I think it was over like 100 women and children that they found in like a little area just that so happened to come across. Seminole Wars. But it just was interesting when I seen that last little city. But let me pull this up. This was the most like craziest thing it's seen to me, because I never knew we had this many goddamn colleges. And this just speaks to a lot of the ignorance as well. I'm from Texas. Obviously, I know PV, Texas Southern. But I didn't know. I've heard of Texas College. I didn't know that was black. I heard of Wiley. I didn't know that was black. I ain't really never heard of these other ones. Grambling knew was black. Dillard, I didn't know was black. Xavier, I didn't know was black. University of Arkansas and Pine Bluff, I didn't know was black. The truth is right in front of us. They try to say, "Oh, look, black people ain't Native American." Bro, just look where we have historically develop our land, and look where the last bits of Native Americans was. It's a hell of a coincidence. Bethune-Cookman didn't know it's black. Florida A&M, I knew about that one, I believe. Just look at all these black colleges and think about it. Black colleges, what do you historically see in the college area? A town. This is why I'm referencing to this map. Black areas, you usually find a black town, or you're going to find a college town around it. When you go to any college, got a town around it. So if it's a black college in that area, you would assume it's a black town in that area as well. That's why I wanted to show y'all this. And then this is just to reference y'all, like what happened in Houston, what happened in Tulsa. It happened in a lot of these places where they even flooded these cities, burned these cities, just straight up raped and pillaged these cities. And took land from us that we had worked to develop. And I get it. He said we had character. We had morality at a certain point in time when you go back. When you look at the 1800s, this was still around slavery. Slavery was still existing until like the late 19s. Early 19s. So black people were still able to find college, which, yes, this was later on in slavery, but it showed that we had a propensity to build for ourselves. I agree with that. But what happens when you try, and then we're supposedly out of slavery, and then you doing shit that was even worse to us than when we were in slavery, essentially? Like, of course, beating an individual person is crazy. Beating families, separating families is crazy. But what's even crazier is these people started to rebuild themselves up. They started to just resurge together, essentially. I don't know where I can think of. They started to come back together. And when they did that, you waited and then destroyed it. I could just see how our mentally be fucked up. It's like, bro, we supposed to be out of slavery. We supposed to be past this. That's it, man. I'm going to leave it there. I'll be back in probably like 30 minutes. I need to use the restroom and give me a blunt or two. and we'll be back with some red pill conversation. But thank y'all for watching, man. It's been an interesting topic. Jesse Lee honestly got destroyed. There were some talking points. I understand his points. I could kind of understand and get. But for the most part, he comes off as just an ignorant coon, saying just straight up making straight up statements that just don't make sense. Like, oh, racism was a lie. That didn't exist. Land wasn't stolen. Like, come on, bro. Do you even know where the fuck you at? But like Umar said, he too damn old to act like that. And that's the real disgrace. But thank y'all for watching. Peace. Boy, I gotta take those shits.